Here's what we're up to today. We're having a production meeting about Rilee. So it's really exciting. We're going to talk about Rilee and what's happening with it so far. And we are also going to talk about the next stories as well. So join us for the ride.
The concept of Rilee to me was Craig sitting down with me and saying he's come up with an idea, and it's a bit different to what we've done previously, and that's when he explained the idea of the children's book to me.
Rilee has been in my imagination for a really long time. It's something I've always wanted to do, was to create a children's character. I myself grew up with children's characters, you know, memorable ones, Thomas, Brum, and I kind of wanted to see whether we could create a character.
When Craig said that he wanted to write a storybook about a classic car, it was quite exciting because he was like, Molly, now I've got an idea. He was like, come in my office. I've got an idea, but I'm not sure about it yet. What do you think of this? Now, instantly, when he mentioned about Rilee, this beautiful car behind me, and the story behind it, and making that into a children's book, I thought it was very clever indeed.
Writing it, a challenge for me was the fact is that I knew absolutely nothing about cars. I liked cars, I liked driving in cars, I liked being a passenger in lovely cars, I love classic cars, but I knew nothing about how a car runs, how it's made, and basically any of the background to how you get these cars from a factory to a forecourt. So I had to do quite a lot of research into Rilee. So for me, it was completely new territory. I have quite a background of children, and obviously with my acting and directing background, I kind of knew how to theatricalise, if that's even a word, the story, but the actual bare bones of how a car is put together and how it's made was something that I really had to work on.
The big one for me was it's so different to anything I've done before. You know, I write maybe 95% of everything that comes out of British Classic Cars, but this is a very different audience, a very different way of writing. So it was the challenge of switching off I need to tell this story in the best possible way to appeal to people who love classic cars. It's now about telling the story in a way that young people are going to understand and be invested in, and you know, like to get involved in the world of classic cars as a result.
Some of the earliest challenges that I experienced in the project were, first of all, how am I going to pull this off? In terms of the video, like how am I going to do this? I can't say that I only make videos for grown-ups now, because we've made videos for kids now. That was my biggest hurdle, was how do I visually tell the story that Craig and Sally had created and do it justice?
I think when Craig and Sally were sitting down, and I was in on a couple of the first meetings, it was kind of the kind of tone, I guess, they wanted Rilee to have. Like, would Rilee be kind of given a gender or not? Are we just kind of basing it, are we making it more person-like, or is it more like, okay, so this car is the object itself? I think that was quite a interesting hurdle and a nice way to kind of workshop which kind of avenue they would go down.
I think, you know, from the first conversation with Craig about him having the idea for the story, it was a case that we've all got various strengths and weaknesses and skills within the team, but it was clear from the start that it was going to be a big team effort and a challenge for everyone. So we needed to look slightly further afield, you know, which is where someone like Sally comes in.
I think Craig had the idea, the initial idea. of wanting to do something with this gorgeous car, Rilee, and rather than it just sitting there and, you know, occasionally being seen. So he had the idea of that would be really good, like I said, to engage the younger generation into classic cars. He had then had a conversation with Molly about what they could do, and I think he had then came up with this idea of a book, and then Molly obviously knew that I'd written before.
We each have got our own skill sets, and it was just when the time was right to introduce the next skill set. So the concept needed to become a written story. So we went to the people we know who are great story writers. Once you have a story written, you need to find a storyteller, which is Molly. Like, you know, she's an actress, she's a singer, that kind of thing. She has a background in working with children as well as having her own. So she understands probably more of how children react to stories. And then it was, okay, we need to show this to people. So then that's when me and Rob got brought in. Rob is a very talented writer for marketing, for putting across importance and stuff in words. And I can use cameras. That's my way of storytelling, you know, for good, bad, or indifferent. That's my thing. So we're all of us are storytellers. So it's how we brought a team of storytellers together that all complemented each other.
I think I was very protective over it to start with. I think because Bridge Classic Cars as a whole, we've got an incredible team here, and they all have a place in where Bridge Classic Car is right now. The marketing department knows exactly what they're doing, and then I created something which was completely out of everybody's comfort zone. So I think to start off with, I was like, no, I'll take responsibility of this because it's my project. I'll see where I can go with it. And then the more it's developed, the more I thought, well, actually, we've got the skill set in-house, even to recording it. We've got Molly, you know, so why wait for something to come up that's completely brand new when we've got people who are brilliant at taking photos, we've got people who are brilliant at doing videos, we've got a presenter, we've got everything we need. So I thought, no, I'll bring it in-house and make it part of the Bridge Classic Cars story.
Children's books doesn't really have anything to do with restoring classic cars, but I think it should. And I think that educating young children on what cars used to be like, because I think the future for cars is going to be very different. The cars that are coming out at the moment are a different shape, a different style. May I say, in my own opinion, they're not as exciting and lovable as classic cars.
I think that it's really important in this day and age when we've got so much AI, when there's so much about videos and you can watch things and you don't even have to go outside, to actually be able to introduce these cars to children, and so that they can have a first hand, they can actually get close up and see these cars and see how they work, and to keep the future of classic cars alive, really.
I never thought this at the time before I had my own child. I never really got that that connection with children, and then I had a little boy myself, and then when he was bringing things home from school and teaching me stuff that he'd learnt at school that day, little things like brushing your teeth and turning the tap off, we all knew to do it, but coming from a 6-year-old, it meant something, you know, and recycling, it meant something. And we talk about sustainable fuel and electric cars and the future of what things are going to be. We are building old cars that fit in the future. So it just made perfect sense. It all came together that's why I wanted to create Rilee, to give a really positive outlook to children and to get them to understand the importance of our history and where we've come from, because all around us there is a story before we were here. There is a story, and Rilee is a really good example of that. It's 120 years old and it's still here now, and it's still survived in the modern world because of what we can create now.
again, coming back to having two young girls, I want them to understand how the world has got to where it is today, you know, without learning about history and, you know, the older generations, whether that be cars, people, royalty, whatever that may be. I want them to understand that, you know, we wouldn't have what we have and we wouldn't be where we be without everything that's happened beforehand. And I think that is where classic cars and young children fit perfectly together. You know, every classic car has a story, every classic car has a different meaning and a different outlook to every single person that sees it, you know. So I think it fits nicely and it helps young children understand the history of where we are.
Well, we're making the second and third story in one hit. The idea, the premise behind it is still there. I think I've taken my experiences in the last year, personal experience, places I've been, things I've witnessed, and I'm bringing them into the story now. So whereas Eco, which is a sustainable fuel car, I suppose when I came up with Eco, it was the story was just going to be set somewhere. And then you go to places like Goodwood Revival and you see how for 2 or 3 days the world is transformed. If you're in the Goodwood site, the world is transformed into what it was like in the 1940s and 1950s.
Basically trying to create something that's visually interesting for a child. And almost in some ways trying to create videos and a visual language and stuff that I wish I'd have seen when I was a kid. So in some ways it's kind of righting some of the wrongs of my childhood. I grew up with, you know, Brum, stuff like that, and I loved it. And, you know, you had anything with a steam train in it, I'd watch it. So yeah, it's basically almost a little bit of satisfying the inner child.
I think it'd be really good to kind of go out of the garage and see what it's like for a classic car when they're not in you know, when they're not in a garage, when they're out there with modern cars, and just see how that kind of develops in the story arcs.
I think the relevance that Rilee has is that it is a piece of history. It's a piece of history, and that if people don't restore cars like this or take care of history, it's just going to be forgotten. And I think it's really important that we always kind of remember where we started to where we are now, because without that we wouldn't be where we are now. And I think that's really important.
I think Rilee's relevance in the modern world is that it shows that things can remain, but for things to remain, they also have to change. You know, the approach to certain things have to change. You know, you don't need to get new things. You can fix old things. Sometimes old things are better than new things because they are designed to last. I think in the modern world as well is things like Rilee show patience. They show perseverance. They show that even when something is a massive challenge, you still take it head on. Might take you longer, might have to do it bit by bit. And I mean, that's just the car, but the same thing goes for the story, for everything that we're doing is, you know, it's bit by bit, but you keep going at it and it will teach you something and you'll get something out of it, yeah.
I mean, I look at Rilee and I think the story of, you know, the Rilee itself and the restoration, without that car, we probably wouldn't have the cars we have today, you know, and I think you can say that about all classic cars, but that one in particular. You know, and in terms of where I see it, I think it's a really good foundation of the story and helping people understand that that was the starting point of where we are. So it's the starting point of the future, effectively, you know. So, you know, in 1905, when Rilee fired up for the first time, the people around didn't know it at the time, but we're now running cars on synthetic fuel, on electricity, on hydrogen, and it all stems back to that one car, effectively. So I think I'd like to see how we take Rilee into the more distant future.
Well, Riley's got everything for relevance in the modern world. I think it's really good that classic cars can be made to be sustainable, that they're able to be used and they're good for the environment. Just the craftsmanship in the cars and the personality. I mean, I do believe that cars have their personalities. I don't know if other people do, but I always give my car, usually give it a gender or a name at least. And I think that it's these lovely quirky characters of these classic cars that I think are really important for us to then sponge off when we surround ourselves with such modern technology.
I think the important part of Rilee, where it's different from Eco and Luxy, is Eco and Luxy are old cars that have got technology in them created today that will make them last today. Rilee's different. Rilee is the same as Rilee was 120 years ago, within reason. And I think the message of Rilee is that when essentially it's a true story. We have built Rilee and probably used 80 to 90% of the original parts, and that's the important part of Rilee's story, that we're trying to educate children and people that we live in a throwaway society, but we don't have to. The wood you see Rilee, within reason, is the existing wood from 120 years ago. Everything that we've done is to preserve what's already in existence. And I suppose the longer term message is that we don't need to build these huge factories and pump out electric cars. It's already here, and it's just working what we've already got. There is a place, don't get me wrong, there's a place for a brand new electric car, but in the classic car world, we don't need to throw all of these cars away. They're here and they can survive today.
What's not next? I think the world is our oyster.
What's next, I guess, is looking at more characters for Rilee to meet, more stories for Rilee to tell, and yeah, just lots of exciting things as the audience grows.
Well, we get to see about Eco's story, which is lovely, and Eco's a bit of a racer, so this will be really exciting to see what happens when he gets on the racetrack.
I would like to get the Luxy and Eco stories done. I mean, as we're recording this, they're not done yet. They're in my mind, but they're not down on paper. So I think short term, that's what I would like to do. Now I've brought everybody else in on it, and I'm not trying to do it all myself. I'm more excited about where it can go.
I see the world expanding in front of Rilee. You know, it starts off sort of humbly in our little workshop, but a bit like what we do is everything that we do finds the world, and that's what I see happening next. Is Rilee going on adventures with like Eco, Luxy, other characters we don't know. Like, and that's the whole perfect thing. Is it's a little bit, it's kind of a little bit like a metaphor for life. You never know what happens next because it's unwritten.
This week we have had 4 live draws, and here's them now. Now this is for our Sauber Ferrari, Sergio Perez's Sauber Ferrari from the 2011 British Grand Prix. Sculpture. 3, 2, 1. 2,908. Yeah, 2908. There we go. Tony Lockhart, congratulations. You have just won our Sauber Ferrari sculpture. So this is for our Triumph TR3. Okay, 3, 2, 1. 5,751. 5,751. 51!
Yes,
We have a winner. Anthony Wilkinson. Anthony Wilkinson, congratulations. You have just won yourself a beautiful 1960 Triumph TR3. So this is now the live draw for our Rectora Onyx watch. Good luck, everybody. I'm going to count down from 3 and we're going to find our winner. 3, 2, 1. Number 594. There it is. Okay, I might need a little help pronouncing this. Miroslav, perfect. Miroslav Kozak? Kojak. This is the live draw for our MG Midget, the completely free competition. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Number 9,680. 9,680. We have a winner, Kevin Wild. Kevin Wild, congratulations. You have just won yourself an MG Midget completely for free.